fear whispers, don't try, don't move, stay safe. And if you listen, it will quietly steal your life, one moment at a time. Fear is a shadow that follows us everywhere, but it only has power if we give it space. The moment you begin to notice fear without obeying it, life opens in ways you never imagined. Alan Watts teaches us that freedom begins when we face fear consciously and refuse to be dominated by it. Fear is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to see fear as a warning to stop, to retreat, to protect ourselves. And indeed, fear often signals danger, but the danger it highlights is not always literal. Sometimes fear is simply pointing toward growth, change, or opportunity. The trick is learning to recognize fear for what it is, a signal, rather than treating it as an order to halt. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, preparing to jump into a river below. Fear tells you to stay put. That is natural. But imagine instead that the jump represents a chance to swim in the most refreshing, exhilarating water you've ever known. Fear has not disappeared. It still raises your heartbeat, tightens your chest, and whispers caution. Yet, if you pay attention, you will notice that fear is not stopping you. It is highlighting the importance of this moment. It is drawing your awareness to what truly matters. Alan Watts often spoke about the difference between being ruled by fear and observing it. Fear is a natural response of the mind and body to the unknown, but its presence does not have to dictate your behavior. To act in the presence of fear is to move forward consciously, not recklessly, but deliberately. Fear becomes a guide, not a jailer. The awareness that fear is a signal transforms its meaning completely. Most people confuse fear with danger. They believe that if they feel afraid, something is wrong. Yet most fears are emotional, psychological, or social, not physical. Fear of failure, rejection, or the unknown is common because it signals that you are stepping outside of the familiar. And stepping outside the familiar is exactly where growth occurs. If fear appears, it may be saying, "This is important. Pay attention. Proceed with awareness." The paradox is beautiful. The very thing that frightens us is often the path to what we most desire. Fear signals that you are alive, that you are conscious, that you are on the threshold of transformation. By ignoring fear or trying to eliminate it, we lose the guidance it offers. By observing it and acting deliberately, we turn fear into a compass pointing toward our potential. The key is not to act without fear, but to act with fear. Let it be a companion that heightens your awareness instead of paralyzing you. The heart races, the palms sweat, the mind protests, and yet every step you take despite fear builds courage, confidence, and resilience. Fear becomes less threatening, not because it disappears, but because you no longer allow it to control you. Think of one area in your life where fear is telling you to stop, but deep down, you know growth is possible. What is one small action you can take this week despite that fear? Share it in the comments. Your courage may inspire someone else to take their first step. Many people misunderstand courage. They imagine it as a state where fear simply vanishes, a heroic moment when the mind is calm, the heart is untroubled, and danger is met with effortless bravery. But this is a myth. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. True courage is acknowledging fear's presence, understanding it, and still choosing to move forward. Fear is a natural, protective mechanism. It signals that something matters, that the stakes are real, or that the unknown looms ahead. Without fear, we would lack the awareness to navigate life thoughtfully. But it is precisely this awareness that allows us to practice courage. Courage does not deny fear, it dances with it, listens to it, and uses it as guidance rather than control. Alan Watts often emphasized the importance of embracing the present moment, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. In the same way, courage is about embracing fear, not resisting it. When you feel your heart pound before a challenge, when doubt creeps into your mind, when your body tenses with anticipation, these are not signs to retreat. They are signs that something significant awaits on the other side of fear. The act of moving forward transforms fear from a barrier into a bridge. Consider a simple example: speaking your truth to someone you care about, taking a leap into a new career, or pursuing a dream that others doubt. Fear may be loud, it may whisper. You could fail, you might be rejected. What if it goes wrong? Courage responds, I see you, fear. I respect you, but I will act anyway. The action itself is what defines courage. It is a choice, repeated moment by moment, that builds inner strength and self trust. Courage is not reckless or thoughtless, it is disciplined and deliberate. It requires self awareness, reflection, and the willingness to accept uncertainty. Each act of courage is a practice in aligning your actions with your values, even when fear is present. Over time, courage becomes habitual. You stop waiting for fear to disappear before you act. Instead, you act with fear as a companion. The beauty of this understanding is that courage grows stronger the more you exercise it. Fear becomes less paralyzing because you realize it is not an enemy, it is information. Courage is the skill of responding to fear with mindfulness and action rather than being dictated by it. It is freedom in motion. Think about one situation where fear has been holding you back, but where courage could open the door to growth. What is one small step you can take this week to act despite fear? Share it in the comments. Your courage might inspire someone else to take their first step as well. Fear is most often a story your mind tells about what might happen, not what is happening. It exists in the future, in the realm of uncertainty, and it feeds on imagination, speculation, and what ifs. This is why fear can feel so powerful, even when there is no real danger present. Our minds are incredibly skilled at creating vivid scenarios of potential failure, rejection, or loss, and when we believe them, we experience fear as though it were reality. Alan Watts often reminded us that the present moment is all there is. The past is memory, the future is imagination. Fear lives almost entirely in this imagined future. It says, what if I fail? What if I'm rejected? What if it doesn't work out? But none of these things exist yet. They are projections, illusions created by a mind seeking control over the unknown. Fear uses the future to keep you small, cautious, and restrained. Consider how often you delay a decision, avoid a conversation, or skip a bold step simply because of imagined consequences. You tell yourself you are being careful, responsible, or wise, but what you are really doing is allowing the mind's projections to dictate your present choices. Every moment you give power to fear is a moment stolen from action, creativity, and presence. The antidote is simple. Though it requires practice, return to the present. Focus on what you can do right now. The future will arrive in its own time, and the events you fear may never manifest at all. By grounding yourself in the present, you reduce the power of fear, because fear cannot exist fully in the now. You may still feel the twinge of worry, the pull of anxiety, but you are no longer controlled by it. You act consciously instead of being trapped in a hypothetical what if. Alan Watts often described life as a river. Trying to control the current or imagining all the rocks ahead only creates tension. Fear is that tension. It is the mind anticipating every obstacle in advance. But life flows in the present, not the imagined future. By letting go of projections and acting deliberately, you navigate the river with grace and clarity. The rocks may still be there, but you meet them with awareness, not panic. Ultimately, fear is a teacher pointing to your opportunities for growth. It tells you where you care, where risks exist, and where change is possible. But the lesson is learned not in avoiding the future, but in returning to the present and acting from a place of awareness and intention. Think about one fear that keeps you stuck in what-if scenarios. What is one small step you can take today to focus on the present and act despite imagining the worst? Share it in the comments. Your insight may inspire someone else to step forward into the now. Fear has a strange power. It grows when ignored, denied, or resisted, but it diminishes when faced with awareness. Most people try to push fear away, distract themselves from it, or convince themselves it isn't real, but this avoidance only feeds it. The more we deny fear, the louder it becomes. The paradox is that fear does not vanish through denial, it vanishes through observation. Think of fear as a shadow. When you hide from the shadow, it seems to loom larger, darker, more threatening. But the moment you turn toward it, when you shine a light on it and study it calmly, it begins to shrink. Observation does not mean indulgence or overthinking. It means noticing fear without judgment, naming it, and letting it exist as it is, without letting it control your actions. Alan Watts often spoke about the art of mindful awareness. the practice of observing life as it unfolds without clinging or resisting. Fear operates in much the same way. When you observe fear without trying to escape it, you no longer mistake its intensity for reality. You recognize that fear is a response, not a rule. It is a signal, a teacher, a companion, and nothing more. Consider a moment when you felt intense fear, maybe before speaking in public, confronting someone, or taking a bold step toward a dream. At the peak of that fear, it can feel insurmountable. But when you pause, breathe, and allow yourself to notice it, the racing heart, the shallow breath, the anxious thoughts, it begins to lose its grip. Observation creates distance. You are no longer fused with fear. You are witnessing it, studying it, and deciding consciously how to act. This practice does not make fear disappear entirely. There will always be moments when the mind alerts you, when uncertainty or risk triggers the familiar pulse of anxiety. But fear is no longer the dictator of your actions. It becomes a guidepost, a sign that you are stepping into something important, meaningful, or transformative. Fear shrinks because it thrives on identification. When you say, "I am afraid," and let that define you, fear expands. When you say, "I notice fear," and let it exist without judgment, it contracts. The difference is subtle but profound. Observation transforms fear from a tyrant into a teacher, from a barrier into a compass pointing toward growth. The beauty of this truth is that it is accessible in every moment. You do not need to be fearless to act. You need only to observe, acknowledge, and proceed. Each act of conscious observation reduces fear's control and strengthens your sense of agency, presence, and freedom. Think about a fear you've been avoiding. How can you pause and observe it today without judgment? Share your experience in the comments. Your awareness might inspire someone else to meet their fear with courage. Fear is one of the most powerful illusions of the mind. It often convinces us that danger is imminent, that we are unprepared, or that failure is unavoidable. Yet when we step back and examine it closely, we discover that much of what we fear is not rooted in reality. It is a story our mind is telling, a projection of what might happen rather than what is happening. Fear is often illogical, yet we respond to it as if it were absolute truth. Consider how often we hesitate to speak our truth, pursue a dream, or step into something unfamiliar because of imagined consequences. We may fear judgment, failure, or rejection. Our mind amplifies these possibilities, creating vivid scenarios where the worst outcomes occur. And while fear may feel urgent and real, these scenarios rarely manifest in the exact way we imagine. Yet we allow them to dictate our decisions, ceding control of our lives to imagined threats. Alan Watts taught that much of human suffering comes from mistaking thoughts for reality. Fear thrives in the same way. It takes a possibility, a hypothetical risk, and inflates it until it dominates our thoughts and shapes our actions. But fear is not the enemy. It is a messenger. Its presence indicates that something important is at stake, something that matters to you. The key is not to eliminate fear, but to recognize its illogical nature and act despite it. When we recognize fear as often illogical, we create space for clarity and choice. Instead of reacting impulsively or avoiding a situation, we pause, assess, and ask ourselves, is this fear based on evidence or imagination? Is it a warning or a projection? By questioning fear, we weaken its authority over us. The mind begins to see fear as a tool, a signal to pay attention, rather than a tyrant demanding compliance. The irony is profound. The moments when fear seems strongest are often the moments when growth, transformation, and fulfillment are closest. Fear is a companion on the path of evolution, but it is a companion that only has power if we let it. Illogical or exaggerated as it may be, fear becomes meaningful when we acknowledge it without surrendering our agency. Understanding that fear is often illogical is liberating. It allows us to act even when our mind screams, "Stop." It teaches us to separate imagination from reality, possibility from probability, and anxiety from action. And each time we act despite illogical fear, courage strengthens, confidence grows, and the voice of fear becomes quieter and more manageable. Think about a fear that has kept you from taking a step forward. Can you identify whether it is based on reality or imagination? Share in the comments one fear you are ready to face, knowing it may not be as threatening as your mind believes. Your courage can inspire someone else to confront their own fears. Fear thrives on inaction. The more we dwell on it, the louder it becomes, echoing in our minds like a warning siren that never fades. Yet the most profound truth about fear is that it cannot survive sustained action. When we move, when we act despite fear, its power diminishes. Action is the antidote. It is the bridge from paralysis to freedom, from doubt to clarity. Think about the moments in your life when you felt paralyzed by fear. Perhaps it was a choice to speak your truth, pursue a dream, or confront a difficult conversation. While imagining these moments, fear may have felt immense, almost insurmountable. But once you took a step, even a small one, you realized something remarkable. Fear did not disappear immediately, but it became manageable. Every action we take in the presence of fear shrinks it, because action turns possibility into reality. Alan Watts often spoke of life as a dance, a flowing movement rather than a static state. Fear attempts to halt this dance, whispering that standing still is safer. But standing still only allows fear to grow unchecked. Action, even imperfect action, breaks the illusion that fear controls you. It teaches your mind that fear is informative but not determinative. You can feel it without obeying it. Action does not need to be monumental. Even the smallest step forward is transformative. Sending an email, making a call, starting a conversation, taking the first step toward a goal, all these actions disrupt fear's authority. Each movement builds confidence, resilience, and momentum. Fear loses its grip because the mind begins to recognize a simple truth. You are capable of navigating challenges, one step at a time. Moreover, action reveals reality in ways that imagination never can. Fear often exaggerates, conjuring worst-case scenarios, projecting failure long before anything has occurred. But action grounds you in the present. You confront the situation as it truly is, rather than as your mind predicts it. This confrontation transforms fear from an abstract shadow into a manageable companion. The unknown becomes known, the imagined threat becomes tangible, and courage is born through experience. Ultimately, action is not about the absence of fear, but about choosing movement despite it. It is the conscious refusal to let fear dictate your life. Each act of courage, no matter how small, strengthens your self-trust. Fear may return, but it will return weaker, because you have proven to yourself that it is not the master of your life. What is one small action you can take today despite the fear that has been holding you back? Share it in the comments. Your step forward may inspire someone else to take their own courageous first step. Fear is often seen as the enemy of progress, a force to resist or avoid, but in truth, fear is a teacher. It points us to the areas of life that hold the greatest significance: our dreams, our relationships, our values, and our purpose. When we feel fear, it is a signal that we are on the edge of something meaningful. It is not a punishment, it is a guide. Consider the moments in your life when fear has arisen most strongly. Perhaps it was before pursuing a new opportunity, standing up for yourself, or expressing your true thoughts. These moments often coincide with what matters most to you. Fear appears precisely because something is at stake. It is the mind's way of saying, "This matters. Pay attention." Ignoring fear or trying to eliminate it entirely can lead to stagnation. But when we embrace fear as a teacher, it reveals our priorities, our desires, and our deepest values. Alan Watts often emphasized the wisdom of observing life without resistance. Fear, like any natural emotion, carries information. It tells us what we care about, what we are attached to, and where courage is required. When we recognize this, fear transforms from a barrier into a compass. Instead of avoiding difficult situations, we learn to approach them consciously, guided by what truly matters. Fear can also illuminate hidden truths. Sometimes we are afraid of failure because we deeply value success, connection, or authenticity. Sometimes we fear rejection because we care about being seen, understood, and respected. The intensity of fear reflects the depth of our investment. The more we notice and honor what we fear, the more clarity we gain about our own priorities and the path we must take. The lesson is subtle but profound. Fear is not a reason to retreat. It is a reason to act thoughtfully and deliberately. It is a teacher showing us what is significant. The presence of fear indicates the areas in life where growth, fulfillment, and transformation await. By listening to fear without being dominated by it, We align our actions with our values and take steps toward a life of purpose and meaning. Ultimately, fear becomes a tool for self discovery. It illuminates the boundaries of our comfort zone, identifies the opportunities for growth, and clarifies the things we cannot ignore. The more we embrace fear as an informative signal rather than a threat, the more courage, wisdom, and insight we develop. Life itself becomes a process of learning from fear and acting in alignment with what truly matters. Think about a fear that has been showing you what truly matters in your life. What insight has it given you about your dreams, values, or relationships? Share it in the comments. Your reflection may help someone else recognize the lessons in their own fears. Fear is one of the most persistent illusions in life. It convinces us that we are bound, trapped, and powerless. Yet the truth is that freedom has always been available. It is only our relationship with fear that obscures it. To live fully, to step into your life with courage and presence, you must recognize that freedom exists beyond fear. Fear is a shadow, but your life is light. The moment you stop allowing fear to dictate your choices, you reclaim your power. Alan Watts often spoke about the importance of understanding life as it is, rather than as our mind interprets it. Fear creates a distorted version of reality. It magnifies danger, amplifies risk, and projects worst-case scenarios into every corner of the mind. But when you observe fear without letting it control you, when you act despite its presence, you discover that life itself is not the threat, it is the adventure waiting for you to engage fully. Freedom is not the absence of fear, it is the ability to live in spite of it. It is the conscious choice to act, to pursue what matters, and to embrace uncertainty with awareness. Every time you step forward while fear is present, you practice freedom. The more you practice, the more your life expands. Fear loses its grip, and the boundaries it once imposed begin to dissolve. You realize that you were never truly trapped. Fear was simply an illusion of limitation. Consider the times you've been afraid to speak your truth, follow a dream, or take a bold step. Notice how fear tried to paralyze you, whispering all the reasons why it was safer to stay small. Yet when you act despite those whispers, you touch freedom. Each action dismantles the stories fear tells you. Each step taken in courage enlarges the space in which you can live authentically. Freedom begins the moment you stop waiting for fear to disappear and start moving anyway. Freedom beyond fear also requires acceptance of the uncertainty, discomfort, and risk that life naturally contains. It is not reckless abandon, it is deliberate engagement with the world as it is, with fear as a companion rather than a tyrant. Acceptance transforms fear from a controlling force into a teacher, from a barrier into a guide pointing you toward presence, awareness, and growth. The ultimate lesson is profound yet simple. Fear will always exist, but you are not defined by it. Freedom is your birthright, your natural state, your inherent capacity to act consciously and courageously. Life does not become easier when fear disappears. It becomes richer when you live beyond it. In every moment, you have the choice to let fear rule or to step into your life fully with awareness, courage, and freedom. Reflect on one area of your life where fear has been holding you back. What step can you take today to act despite it and reclaim your freedom? Share it in the comments. Your courage could inspire someone else to step beyond their own fear.